everyone, Tina here for Simon Says Stamp. I hope you're having a lovely day. Thank you so much for joining me. Well, today I'm super excited to share with you a card. We're using the Simon Says Stamp November 2025 card kit. It is a fabulous kit. My focus will be on the stencil that is in the kit. This will make a great focal point. I just thought this was gorgeous, and I love that Simon included 4 positively saturated ink cubes in our kit. So we'll be using all of this on our card. So let's jump in and get started. First off, we're going to do some stenciling. This is a 4-layer stencil that creates a beautiful leaf. Let me put this to the side. We're going to stencil on our ivory cardstock today, and I did trim down my standard sheet. I cut it in half to create a card base with the ivory, okay? And then I have 2 A2 panels. This one's just a regular A2, but this one I trimmed 3/4 of an inch off. Now I did that because our stencils are A2, so they're 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. Trimming 3/4 of an inch off will help my grip mat adhere the stencil without it shifting. We're going to start off with the stencil that has the most leaf surface. I'm going to take my petunia using a blending brush. I'm just going to very lightly go over my leaf first with petunia here. I like to wipe my stencil off while it's on my paper, so for me it's just easier. I'm going to go ahead and remove this portion of our stencil, and look how gorgeous that leaf is. The next stencil that we're using is the one that is left heavy. Okay, we're going to line this up. We will tack it down. I'm going to use my same petunia ink, and we're going to add a little bit more purple to this, but this time I'm going to intensify the color just slightly. We'll wipe off the stencil, and then I'm going to use just a hint of my sangria. I really don't want this much red on my card today, but I do want to add a little bit of highlight just in some certain areas. This is going to be subtle, and I think that's all I'm going to do. So just a little bit of the sangria, which is a beautiful color, by the way. I'm going to wipe off my stencil here, and then we will take a look. So far, so good. Now we have 2 stencils left. This stencil has the stem on the bottom. I'm going to use the one without the stem, and we're going to line this up. With this stencil, we are going to use cabbage, which is probably my favorite green. It layers over those colors just beautifully. Let's wipe off our stencil, and then we will take a look. For this last stencil, we're going to add some honey. This is just going to warm it up a little bit. Beautiful. I'm going to wipe off my stencil. Make sure you wipe this one off really good. Before we remove this stencil, we're going to use our distress paint, which I've never used. This is tarnished brass, and there's a ball bearing in there, so you want to shake it up really good. Okay, and then I'm going to use one of my Ranger mini blending tools. We're going to add a little bit of ink to my glass mat here. Now let me zoom in a little bit more. Okay, and then I'm going to pick up some of this on, maybe we need a little bit more. I'm going to add a little bit more, but I'm going to pick up some of my ink, my distress paint, and I'm going to dab. I'm going to do a little tapping motion, and we're going to add some gold over our honey ink. Okay, just a little bit. It's going to add so much shine. Okay, I do want to mention that once you do this, take your stencil to the sink right away, along with your brush if you reuse this, because when this dries, it dries waterproof. So when you wash this while it's wet, it's a lot easier. I'll do that and I'll be right back. Our distress paint dried, and it dried with a beautiful gold finish. Just stunning. Okay, I'm going to take that extra piece of ivory cardstock, and before we do our die cutting, I'm going to go ahead and take some more of our inks. And now I'm going straight from ink cube to paper with this. I'm going to add some yellow here. Okay, and then I'm going to add some petunia at the very bottom. I'm going to give this a second to dry here. I'm going to add petunia at the bottom, and we're overlapping. Creates a real pretty brown. And then I'm going to let this dry a little bit, and then I'm going to take my cabbage and go over the green on top, overlapping. Okay, and I'm also going to take sangria. We'll do a little strip of the sangria right at the bottom. You may not be able to see that, but at least I know it's there. We'll let this dry. Once your inks are dry, we're going to use the red maple die set. I'm going to use the shadow and cut out a ivory shadow, and then with the thanks, this is a pretty neat thanks. That's something special. I'm going to die cut this out with our ink blended area, just making sure I got all the colors in there. And then I'll just take my maple leaf, and we're going to cut out our maple leaf too. So I have my shadow, and then I have this piece. You'll notice when you die cut out your thanks, it's the same size as the shadow. Okay, this creates actually two greetings, and I thought this was so neat. I'm going to flip it over, and then I'm going to use my Simon Says Stamp glue, and I'm going to go over you want to make sure you just go over the letters, which I always just like to add a few dots. Now we're going to layer the shadow over the back. Just layer them both together. You'd think we were stacking them, but actually this is super neat the way this is. Okay, and then I'm going to use my craft pick, and we are going to lift up the outline of the thanks very carefully. This is why it's important you don't want glue on the outline, but you just carefully lift it up, and all of your letters are perfectly spaced. Let me remove these. You can keep these little inside pieces too. You can remove this little inside piece. And then we can remove the inside piece of the K. Now you can keep those pieces because you can make two greetings. Don't toss this away because this is actually great on its own too. You see how pretty that is? So you get two greetings out of this. One of them actually helps in aiding your spacing, which is fabulous. These little pieces, if you wanted to add, you know, the small K piece in the inside of the A, it would actually complete your greeting over here. And then you have 2-for-1 greetings. So nice. How neat is that? I love that. Okay, next what I'm going to do is take the glossy accents that came with our kit, and then I'm going to lightly go over my thanks. So now we have a little bit of glossy accents on our things. That gives great dimension on its own. Okay, but I'm going to go one step further because we have some distressed glitter that came in our kit. This is tinsel, and I'm just going to open it up. What I like to do is just trim a little piece of cardstock. Let me grab my scissors. And I can use this as a spoon. And I'm going to lightly tap just a little bit of glitter over my thanks. It's going to add the right amount of sparkle. I'm actually just going to leave that scratch paper in here as my little spoon. And then I will flip this over, tap the excess off here. And look how gorgeous that is. So now it adds a little sparkle to the shine, and all of those glitter flakes are going to soak in to the glossy accents. Beautiful. I'm going to put this to the side to dry, and now I'm going to be working on a background panel for my leaf. I'm going to take our rainforest cardstock. I'm going to trim this down to 4.5 inches by 3 1/4. We're going to do a little ink blending on this panel now. I have our red maple stencil. This is the one with the most solid area. And what I'm going to do is bring in my petunia ink. And with my blending brush, I'm going to lightly go over the edge of, of my panel. Okay, and I'm going to do this all along the edge here. There we go. So we went around the entire edge of our panel. Now we're going to repeat it, and I'm going to intensify the color and overlap. This is going to create a really fun look. You see how we're overlapping? And that's all we're doing with the stencil, but I'm not done with this panel just yet. What I'm going to do next is take our Small Things stamp set. We get 2 stamp sets in our kit this month. Okay, there's a lot of sub-sentiments or pre-sentiments in the stamp set. I'm just going to open the package up just like this. I'm going to leave all of these in here. Okay, and then I'm going to take my petunia and I'm going to just go over some of these greetings that go with thanks. And then I'm just going to lightly tap it in the background. We're just going to do this a couple of times. The best part about this is there is no right or wrong with this. So now we have some print back there, kind of faded in the background. Wonderful, but we're going to go one step further. Now I'm going to clean off my stamp. And now I'm going to bring in my distress paint. I'm going to add some distress paint here. And then using, again, my blending tool, I already rinsed it off earlier, I'm going to pick up some ink and I'm going to go over my stamp. You want to kind of work fast when you do this, because you don't want this ink to dry on your stamp. And then I'm going to do the same thing we did with our regular ink. Just tap it on our background. And there we go. Okay, before this dries, I'm just going to use my spray bottle and spray it. That way it doesn't dry on, I'm using my distress sprayer. But you want to do this because you don't want the ink to dry on your stamp. Okay? And then all I'm going to do is wipe off that ink from my stamp. And then we are good as gold. Okay, I'm going to put this to the side. While I was cleaning my stamp, it gave this a second to dry. The distress paint actually dries really quickly. I appreciate that. Now I'm going to take our metallic gold cardstock, and then I'm going to trim down a 1/2 inch strip here. About a 1/2 inch strip. I'm going to add some glue to our panel that we just created. And I'm going to layer this. Anything overhanging, I'm just going to trim away. I'm going to use my corner rounder and just round the top right corner. And that's all there is to that. What we're going to do next is bring in our splatter box, and we're going to do some more splattering with our distress paint. So I'm going to put in my panel here, and I'm also going to add my leaf that we created. I'm going to give this another shake, and then I'm going to add some ink here. I'm going to add a little water. We're going to water it down. In our kit this month, we even get a paintbrush. So I'll use our paintbrush, and then we're going to pick up some ink. I'm going to add a little more water. And then I'm going to do some splattering on here. And also on my leaf. Now we'll give this a second to dry. I used my heat gun to help do a drying process, and it did warp a little bit, but no worries, because we're going to add some Simon Says Stamp foam behind our panel. I'm going to use my RIFIC tape, and we're going to add some to the back here. I'm going to remove the release paper, and then I'm bringing in some DMC floss. This is D301. I'm going to wrap it around 3 times here. I think that's the right amount. And then I can just trim off, just so we have a little extra texture on our card. And then I'm going to add my foam right over the top. And then I did add some of my RIFIC tape on the back side of the foam. So So we taped it up really good. This is going to help straighten it, okay? I have my card base that we created with our ivory cardstock. I am going to round the corners on the top right here also. And then I'm going to add our panel right in the center. Once this is adhered to our card base, I did put glue behind my maple leaf. I want this to be hanging over just a little bit. We'll adhere this down. Now we're going to add some bells and whistles. I did take my DMC floss and I created a bow with it. And I'm just going to secure that with a glue dot at the base of my leaf here. Now we're going to add our thanks, and I did use some of my Simon foam behind here. I'm going to layer it. I do want it overhanging the bow knot. And we'll just add this right in the center here. Beautiful. Now after we have this done, I do want to embellish it a little bit more, okay? And to do that, I'm going to use my glossy accents. Okay, I'm going to add some droplets in my background, maybe one on my leaf, and then a couple different sizes, maybe one over here, and we'll add a couple over here. And then I'm going to bring back my glitter, and the same thing that we did with our greeting, I'm going to use with our distress glitter. What I'm going to do is just add a little glitter to the glossy accents. Wonderful. We don't really need too much. And then I'm going to take this and tap this over my garbage can. So the glossy accents are like little shimmery pearls now. And that will finish off my card today for Simon Says Stamp using the card kit for November 2025. It's called Give Thanks. I hope this gives you a little bit of inspiration, and don't be afraid of the mixed media. It's super fun to play with, especially with all the goodies in our kit this month. Have a wonderful day. Thanks so much for joining us over here at Simon Says Stamp. Bye-bye.
I'm Heidi, Simon's mama and founder at simonsaysstamp.com. Thank you so much for watching our video. If you like what you just saw, be sure to press the thumbs up and subscribe to see more great content.